What's going on, everybody? It's been about a year and a half since I opened my record store, Too Many Records in Portland, Oregon, and it's the best job I've ever had. Without a doubt, it has brought me the most joy on a day-to-day basis in terms of what I do for a living. There's a lot of great things I could talk about as like the best things about owning a record store, and maybe I'll do a specific video on that down the road. But I'd like to take this video to talk about the hardest things about owning a record store because I think that's going to be interesting for a lot of people, especially if you're thinking about opening a record store in the near future or the far future. These things are considerations that I think are worth hearing about. If you've not subscribed to this channel yet, I'd really appreciate it if you did so. Please click the subscribe button and the bell next to it so you turn on notifications and don't miss out on videos I put out. Now, without further ado, these are the 5 things that I think are the hardest thing about owning a record store, and some are probably pretty obvious, and some might not be, so stick around. The first is very obviously finding consistently good collections. Now, my store is 95 to 98% used. We very, very rarely use distro, sometimes to fill a bin that might be a little empty if we're not getting a lot of trade-ins of that genre, but mostly the store subsists on collections, whether it's things that walk in the door, or us seeking out collections to try to find them, or cool things from my own collection that I bring in to add a little bit of flavor, things that you wouldn't normally see at your usual record store. Now, when things walk in the door, that's the best feeling because usually it's pretty interesting. Sometimes people bring total junk and it's a hard thing to have to tell people these records aren't worth anything even if they were in good condition and these are super beat up, so I can't give you anything. I'm so sorry. That's a horrible feeling because a lot of times people have no idea and then they're stuck lugging records around, and we can't really be in a position to be taking your junk to eventually just donate. We already have so much in the back that we just can't be inundated with records that will literally never sell. On the flip side of that coin, a lot of amazing records walk in the door. I am consistently flabbergasted by things that people bring in for trades. I mean, I had a first press of Gabor Szabo's Dreams walk in. I had Sister Nancy's 1-2 walk in. Just things you never think you would see just walk in the door and people are like, I'd like to trade this in, which is very cool. And I think the way trades work usually is people bring things to the nearest record store. Of course, there's word of mouth, if people are asking around and doing the research, ideally, people will tell them, oh, I traded records into this store and I had a good experience. And that's why we tend to pay as top dollar as we can so that people will then say, oh, I traded in records at Too Many Records and I had a good experience. Word of mouth's important, but ultimately more important than that is location. People are going to bring records to the closest record store to them just because a lot of people don't do the research. So there's a lot of luck involved with who gets what collections in town when people are bringing medium to small size collections to trade in or sell. So that's a huge factor of the unknown aspect of gathering collections. And then there's the seeking out collections. I always try to find collections in the most unique ways possible, utilizing different websites and forums just to be like, hey, I'm looking to buy collections. Anyone selling? And it's worked in the past. It's kind of hit or miss. Sometimes people are like, sure, I'm willing to entertain a bulk offer, and you take the time to go through every record and you make the bulk offer and they're like, that's way too low. And you're like, well, that's what the bulk offer is. I mean, you're not going to get max value for these records if I'm buying 150 of them because that defeats the whole point of me being a store. So it's hard to explain that to people as well. The hardest part for me is doing the whole garage sale, estate sale circuit. It's just very frustrating. Like, I have had so many experiences where I ask a garage sale, hey, can I purchase these records ahead of time? Of course they can say no, but they say no, like no early birds, no, come at this time and you can get them when you show up. So I'll go to the garage sale at that time and I'll even show up 5 minutes early. And by the time I get there, sometimes someone's already there ahead of time going through all the records, or they had sold the records like an hour prior because someone came by and convinced them to sell it. Now, this is absolutely infuriating because I think to myself, I just asked you to buy them all ahead of time and you said no, but you're saying yes to this person who showed up early when you told me don't show up early. So it's infuriating to me that people are inconsistent when it comes to their rules for their own, their stuff at their garage sale. I've stopped doing them completely because someone always beats you to the punch. Especially in a town like Portland, there's so much competition. Estate sales, same way. Someone's always there first before you, and they'll always go straight to the records and grab everything. So those avenues for me are not very successful. I have a lot more success when it comes to doing things like utilizing my community that I've built for 8 years. I'm always telling you guys on Instagram, on here, I'm looking to buy collections. If you're looking to sell off a portion of your own collection or your whole collection, please contact me. I'd love to work something out with you, whether I drive to you or we figure out a shipping situation. I'm always happy to look at what you have. And I've had some of my favorite collections, big and small, through that method, through the TMR community. So always into that. If you are thinking about taking advantage of that, please reach out to me. I'd love to chat with you about what you're looking to offload. Number 2 is not just selling all of my records online. Now, I get a lot of people messaging me because I have an online platform. Will you sell this online? They see me post something on Instagram. They say, oh, can I buy that? Whatever it may be. And I took this out of Dylan from Noble Records playbook. I think it's extremely important to honor your local community first and make sure that all of your locals get first dibs at records. So when I put a record out, I leave it in the store for 3 to 4 weeks at the bare minimum before it goes online. Because why would I have a brick and mortar store otherwise? Owning a brick and mortar store for me allows me to connect with other music fans and chat music with people that are really interesting and become a part of the amazing music community that Portland has to offer. There's a lot of aspects of owning a store that are more for the social aspects, giving people a place to play a show if they're a small band, things like that bring me a lot of joy, and I enjoy those aspects on a personal level. Those are not necessarily the most financially smart reasons to own a store. Obviously, there's a ton of overhead, so I think, people need to take that into account when they look at prices of a brick and mortar. The owner of that store is not making a profit until they make thousands of dollars every single month just to be able to pay the bills and whatever overhead they may have. So not selling things online can be a challenge. I'll look at incredibly rare records, really desirable things that I have on my wall that in my head I'm like, if I just put this on Discogs, it would sell in 2 days or less. But I don't, because I want to give that local a chance to walk in the door and be like, oh my God, I can't believe this is here in person and I could get it at a store, because that feeling is what you remember when you think about your amazing record store experiences, and that's what builds a community, and that's what builds people coming back. So ultimately, people coming back into the store is extremely important, and sitting on my hands and not just selling everything online is extremely difficult to do. And that leads me to my next point, which is getting people into the store regularly. We are really lucky to have a lot of regulars that come to the store once a week, twice a month, whatever it may be, to come support us, check out what we have. We try to put out stuff every single day, so whenever they come back, there's a new experience, there's something new for them to find. And I think it goes pretty well in that aspect. But that being said, it is a real struggle to let people know that we exist, even a year and a half in. We have people within our own neighborhood in North Portland that come by every single week that say, oh my God, I live 3 blocks away. Did you just open? And I'm like, no, we've been open a year and a half. And they're always mind blown by that. And I think that's because of our location. We're 100% a destination store. You have to know where we are, whether we hit you on an Instagram ad, or you're a fan of the TMR channel, or you're visiting town and you're like, I got to go to Too Many Records, or you've been there before and you're like, I'm going to make a special stop. This is not exactly the kind of location where people are just walking on the street and walking in, which I knew that getting my location, but I didn't realize how difficult it could be until being months and months into owning the store and seeing it firsthand. We have a big fence that blocks us from the road, and the fence blocks off our parking lot. That is a great thing for many reasons. It's protected us, it's made us feel safe, but it also obscures us from view when you're driving past. Despite the fact that there's 2 different signage, whether you're facing the store or you're driving past it, there's a sign above the fence. There's 2 different ways to see the stores there, but the fence still causes people to kind of just like not see it as they drive by. So it's kind of cool to every single week get new people to discover the store, but I also feel like we get a lot less overall traffic because of it. So finding ways to get people into the store is a huge challenge. And I know it's hard for any store, but for us especially, because we don't have the foot traffic aspect of it, it can be really hard. And that's why I do the Instagram flip videos, and I try to build up as much hype for our big drops that we do once a month or twice a month, where we put out, 500 jazz records or a bunch of records of a specific genre to get people really excited. And those do really well, and they get people to come by. Ultimately, for a store to be successful, you just need to have enough regulars to come on a cycle. I think we're at that point where we're doing well enough where we have a consistent crew of people that are coming by, which is a great feeling. But I also feel like there are so many untapped people in Portland who don't know we exist. And if you guys have any suggestions on how to get our name out there that we do exist outside of what we're doing, which is basically Instagram ads and social media stuff, I'd love to hear it in the comments, because we would love to continue to show people in town that we're here. The fact that there are so many people within a few blocks of us that still don't know we're here is it's a little concerning as the store owner. But I don't know what else I can be doing beyond just having people spread the word and running ads and things like that. So that is the third difficult thing about owning a record store, at least for me. The fourth thing is keeping up with the ever-changing prices, especially of what's in the bins. So pricing is such an interesting thing, and almost every store would utilize Discogs in some way to base their pricing off of, whether they price exactly at the median, or they price at what's currently available, or they look at the sales history, or a combination of the three, which is usually how I price things. It's a very complicated thing to keep up with your prices because you just don't have time to consistently comb your bins to make sure your prices aren't too high or too low after you put it out with the fluctuating prices of how records go. And it even gets more complicated when you talk about like an older record. For example, let's say Dark Side of the Moon. When you price a copy of Dark Side of the Moon, you're going to be looking at one specific pressing of, 50 that may exist within the 70s. And that pressing has its own listing on Discogs with its own sale history and its own marketplace. So you're pricing off of that one. Now, there might be a separate pressing from another plant from the same year, same country, and that has its own separate marketplace and its own separate price history. So if I get a VG Plus Dark Side of the Moon and I'm pricing it and I say, okay, this is a nice clean copy, it has the stickers, it has the posters, I'm going to price it at $40 and put it out. There's a chance that I'll get another Dark Side and I'll price it out, and based on the history of that one, it's only $30. Now, that doesn't mean one is more expensive than the other. They're virtually the same record, but I'm using two different ways to price it because they're two different entries, if that makes sense. So that's one aspect of how it gets tricky, where I'll price two records and I'll look in the bin, I'll be like, oh, we have one of these out, but that one is 15 and this one I priced at 25. And it's like they're similar condition, but they're different pressings. It's very hard to be able to keep track of all that. In addition to the fact that records fluctuate in price. I'll price something and put it out in the bin and it'll be $30. And then 2 months later, that record might still be in the store and it's worth $60 now. I don't know that. Someone might come to the counter and get a great deal. That's fine. That's part of owning a record store. And I take advantage of that as a buyer in stores all the time. So I have to be understanding that can happen at my store too. The problem is the other side of things, where I'll price something at $40 because it's usually going for $40 to $50 online. A couple months later, maybe a bunch of copies get listed for $25, $30. And now my $40 copy that 2 months ago was a great price is now overpriced to anybody that goes and looks it up. There are so many instances of that is impossible to combat. You can't just consistently reprice everything you put out. There's no time for that because you're always spending your time trying to clean records, price new records, look for collections. It's moving forward mentality. It's not necessarily reflecting on what you've already done. So that becomes a challenge a lot, to be able to make sure your prices stay competitive, especially once they're out of sight, out of mind in the bins. And the last point for this video is a little personal, and I don't know if everyone's going to relate to this, but I tend to love connecting with my regulars. I love to hear about their lives. I love to talk to them about what they're listening to. And because of that, we build a friendship. And maybe it's just a friendship that exists within the four walls of my store, but it's still meaningful to me. And when I have friends, I don't like to disappoint them. And when you own a store, you sometimes have to disappoint people. And I feel like a large portion of that for me comes to the holds policy. We used to be very willy-nilly with holds and just hold things for anybody that asks. If they message us, we'll say, yeah, we'll hold it for you. We didn't give them a time limit, whatever it may be. And that ended up with us having a ton of records in the back that people were like, oh, I'll be in for it this weekend. And then they don't come in, and then they're just in the back and we forget about them. And they're great records that would sell, but now they're just in the back where nobody can see them. And it might be easy to just say, oh, we'll just keep track of it better and then put it back out. But if you don't tell someone when you're going to put it back out and it's on hold for them, you then have to bug them to be like, when are you coming in? When are you coming in? Which is annoying for both parties. Or you just have to let it sit there and hope that they come in because you told them you would hold it for them. So we modified our hold policy where we're basically like, we're not holding records because people just haven't been coming in for them. And people get upset about that. People feel entitled to be able to hold records if they're regulars at the shop. And it's hard for me, as somebody who tends to be a bit of a people pleaser when it comes to aspects of business like that, to be able to put my foot down and just say, listen, if you want it, you got to come in for it. Like, I can't hold this for you. For someone that I really like and has given me a lot of business. And, very rarely I will hold it if it's a specific scenario and it is a case by case at this point, but our general policy is no holds. And that can be difficult because I do feel like people take it personally. And that's unfortunate because I'm just looking out for my business and it's really not a personal thing. It's more of just I learned the hard way kind of scenario. So there's all the aspects of trying to manage the emotions of your regulars as well. If they've been looking for a specific record and you put it out for sale and you didn't realize, or you forgot they were looking for it, and then they message you like, oh my God, is it still there? And you sold it. And they're like, I was looking for that. And it's like, ugh, I didn't know that, or I forgot because you told me a long time ago. And if you're a regular and you come in the store a lot, we try to keep track of the things you're really looking for. And we do a good job of reaching out to you if it comes in and saying, hey, it came in, this thing you wanted, and they come in and buy it, and it's great. But things fall through the cracks, and people get sad or frustrated, and then it makes me feel bad. So there's emotional aspects to owning a store too, and trying to maintain relationships with people that you care about. Those are the 5 things for this video. This video is already getting kind of long, so I'm going to end it here. I would love to get your thoughts on any of these things in the comments below. If you're a store owner, I'd love for a comment of any of these that may apply to your experience, or anything that I might have left out in this video so I can share if I agree with it as well. I hope this was a little eye-opening for you guys as either shoppers or people who are thinking about opening a store. And again, I can't wait to talk to you guys in the comments about all of these things. So thank you so much for watching this video. More coming soon. Take it easy.